Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MedAxiom and Catalyst webinar today from Catalyst MedTech, optimizing your nuclear lab, why administrators can't afford to ignore it. We're going to get started in just about a minute, but we'll give some folks a little extra time to join. All right, and welcome again, everyone. I'm Max Van Arsdale. I'm the Director of Industry Partnerships at MedAxiom, and pleased to have you join us today for optimizing your nuclear lab, why administrators can't afford to ignore it, presented by Catalyst MedTech. Today, we have some wonderful presenters for you. We have Dr. Scott Jerome. We have MedAxiom's very own Jamie Warren. And then of Catalyst MedTech, we have Tracy Young, who's their product support specialist, and Martin Shirley, who is the CEO and president of Catalyst MedTech. And before I hand things over to Jamie Warren to get things started, just a couple of real quick housekeeping items. We do encourage any questions that you may have. We are leaving some time at the end for a Q&A. And you'll see on the bottom of your screen to ask a question. If you click on the Q&A icon, you can submit your questions that way. We will also be sharing the slides from the presentation with all attendees today via the other icon you'll see there, which is the chat function. So keep an eye on those too, and we would love to hear any questions from the audience. And without further ado, Jamie, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Max. So for today, we have just a couple of learning objectives. If I can get my mouse to work, there we go. So today we'd like to leave you with some practical strategies to boost your lab efficiency, speaking specifically about your nuclear cardiology labs. Talking a little bit about your technologist shortages. I think we hear this on a weekly basis from multiple of our MedAxiom members, and then also how to modernize impact patient care and financial outcomes. So the first part here is really talking about the what. The reason why we're having this particular webinar today is we're really taking a look inside of your nuclear cardiology departments, or specifically into your SPECT cameras or your PET program. And what we're looking at is aging equipment. I would almost give you a homework assignment to go and take a look at your SPECT departments and ask the question of how old is that piece of equipment, and do we have any new technology that is associated with it from a hardware or a software perspective. The other things that we're seeing is that there is a shift in volume, and where that does come into places is, are you having leakage of an imaging modality outside of your space, where if you had updated particular SPECT equipment or PET, that you might have been able to retain that particular patient coming in for imaging. And then lastly is also the discussion about the workforce shortages. And if you have some great technologists that are sitting in your department, we do want to make sure that we also support them with the great and most updated technology. Again, one thing from an administrator, it's not that we don't need any more data, we just need more decisions. And the question really is what information can be provided to those that are making the decisions about the budget or capital dollars. So why does this matter? I'm going to talk to you selfishly from a technologist point of view. Where this really comes into is we're seeing areas of departments where the clinical excellence cannot run on 20-year-old equipment. So if you have a camera that is kind of coming up on that 15, 20 years old, it's not going to be seen having the latest technology from a software hardware perspective. This is really impacting workflows, and it can also lead to poor image quality, downtime, and then low throughput that could be in the department. Tech staffing and burnout are a real. It is talking about efficiency is retention. And then also it's putting our patients in the very middle of our decisions. We want to make sure we have their trust and that their outcomes that they're getting from us really is being able to provide them with a high quality diagnostic study. So this last piece here is kind of like knowing the end at the beginning, but then we're going to have Dr. Scott Jerome come on and provide a very detailed story about how he was able to overcome and be able to get capital for it. But being able to crack that C-suite code, first thing is make it personal. Really think about when you're in front of them, tying it back to your mission, the market needs, and where this is going to impact your patients. Speak the language of the people that you're presenting to. So if you have someone that's from a financial perspective, or if you're talking to a chief operator, or if you're in front of a capital dollar budget committee, just making sure that you understand what their priorities are and being able to speak to that. Keep it tight. You don't want to have a conversation that is 10, 15 minutes. You want to think about talking in bullet points and really being able to provide that relevant information to them. And then also showing the alignment across the entire picture. Frame this as solving their problem. So if there's an access issue, or if there's an issue with being able to do additional testing, this is where it can go in and help paint your story. So from there, I'd like to introduce Dr. Scott Jerome to join us, where he's going to walk us through his journey.
Well, welcome everyone. What I'm going to do is basically tell my story over the past year and a half. So everything Jamie just presented was what we experienced. Next slide. So I'm in a mature practice, mostly office visits and follow-ups, and it's a stagnant practice. We've got a lot of older people, so there were less indications for stress testing. And the office space we were in, we were limited to the number of new patient visits because we had limited exam rooms. All the providers basically had full practices, and we were limiting new patients coming in. We didn't have very many open slots, and we had an extended waiting time for new patients. So we did an environmental scan, and we found out that a lot of local cardiologists were retiring, and there were more patients needing cardiology care. We also found ourselves in expanded hospital coverage, increasing the unassigned call in the hospital. So we found ourselves in more new patients that needed stress tests. We also found ourselves getting more internal medicine referrals because there were less cardiologists around. We got it from internal medicine and pulmonary medicine. So we decided we need more capacity. We need to see more patients. We need new exam rooms. We need a bigger space. We need more cardiology providers that are open to see the need in the community. So we kind of went through it and we said, all right, what do we need? So we decided the solution is just move our offices, get a bigger office, hire more doctors. And this happened, this was a slow process to find a new building, to start building it out. And the costs associated with this, our administrators were dealing with. They're going, boy, can we really pay the cost of the new office off? And they said, yep, we're going to do this. They were all in for the new office. But moving day was coming soon because this took a lot longer than we anticipated to find space and build it out. So the scenario was we're an academic institution with ambulatory centers to do nuclear cardiology. We are moving to a new larger office. This is great. And the camera that we had was about 15 or 20 years old. It was a workhorse. It broke occasionally, but it was just kept cranking out studies. So we said, boy, we're moving to an all new place. We're getting all new stuff, right? This is great. As doctors, we all love new stuff, right? But we found we had to deal with the administrators on everything we wanted and needed. And all of a sudden the administrator said, stop, red light, not so fast. Maybe you're not getting all new stuff. So we went from a smiley, giggly, euphoric state to all of a sudden like, oh no, what's going on? So the administrator says that we're dealing with budget cuts. We have a new government administration, and like I said, we're an academic institution, and all of a sudden our research grants were getting cut. And because of that, we had a hiring freeze, we're laying off people, we're cutting everyone's salaries, and we just can't spend money, they told us. And we simply can't take and they said, you just take all your old equipment, take your echo machine, take your new camera, just take it all to the new office. It's all working, right? And by the way, your volumes are low. And then basically they kind of shut the door and said, we're done. So just the volume history, back in 2018, we were doing way over 1,000 a year, no problem. Then COVID hit. And along with COVID and a lot of other industries, we found out the people were retiring. So our nuclear techs retired. We had a hiring freeze. And as a state institution, we're always in a hiring freeze. It wasn't new to us. And since our nuclear tech left, our stress staff said, this is a great time to go part-time as well. So we said, what are we left with? We're left with low volumes post-COVID, no nuclear tech, part-time stress employees. So we're kind of in a pickle here. So, oh, by the way, did I forget to mention that our radiology just got a new camera for CTAs? And I don't know how they pulled that off, how they convinced them to get a new camera. And then with that, we found, boy, our volumes are moving to CTA away from nuke. So our challenges that we saw was raising equipment costs, raising salaries, difficulty recruiting our staff. We also had reimbursement issues and CT competition. So we had to make a decision. Do we take the old camera with us, or do we buy a new camera? And we had to do this ASAP, as we're moving pretty soon, so we got to make some decisions. So what is one to do? And then this came out, boy, there's a new fee schedule coming. Boy, are you getting paid less to do your studies? We're going to talk about buying more equipment, and you're going to get paid less. Administrators didn't like seeing this slide. So the challenges were increased expense, increased salaries, difficulty finding staff, reimbursement, and CT was going after our volumes. So we had different philosophies. Our philosophy as docs were build it and they will come. Spend the money and invest. We looked at it as an investment. The administrators said, show me the money first, okay? They wanted to save money and they looked at this as an expense. And it just became this circle of, just talking about the same money, but different philosophies about it. Next, yeah. So I had to make a pitch for a new camera, and I tried to do a Shark Tank version. All right, so I went to them with our mission. We're a teaching institution. We teach cardiology. We teach nuclear cardiology. And we have a lot of fellows that we teach. The other mission statement was we do research. So we've got multiple published papers from our nuclear lab. And the third pillar of the university mission was serve the population and take care of patients. So I said to them, we're fulfilling all these needs right now. So this should be easy. Just tell them. That's what I thought. We have a top-notch nuclear program. We're highly prestigious. We give superb quality and expertise all around. We're an academic center. And we should give the best care to patients, not using 20-year-old equipment. We serve the university mission, all three components of it, and the community. And we perform multiple types of nuclear imaging, just not stress tests. We perform PYP and a whole gamut of nuclear imaging studies. So part of this was we can keep the patients out of the hospital by doing high quality scanning, not overcalling, not undercalling. And what did they come to me? They didn't budge. They said, nope, it's going to cost money. So as a provider, what do we do not so well? We're not salesmen. We don't know how to sell. I have no clue how to do this. So I said, what do I do? And I thought about how we learn everything these days. And I went to YouTube, right? And what does YouTube say? Make it simple, give three simple points, right? First was a talking point. Be brief, to the point, give the elevator talk, right? Can you make it between the first floor and the fourth floor and get your point across? Make it personal. And then you got to show them the money, right? And if you go to YouTube, it's a million videos on these same talking points. So we explained to administrators exactly what the nuclear stress test was and why. So the administrators, so we went out to some camera manufacturers and said, all right, we're looking at cameras. Can you give us your spiel, right? And in their spiel, they presented this to our administrators. This is what a nuclear camera does. Well, this was a lot of words, small font, right? And the administrators had no clue what this was. They didn't even read it, right? We understand it as practitioners, but it was like, so this was, I thought, the wrong approach. This was too long, too small a font. I wanted to make it like we were all trained how to give PowerPoint presentations. You give 4 points per slide and you make it simple, make it big font, so it's actually readable. And then the question was, how do we make it personal? right? So this was an interesting concept. So what I did, I looked at one of the things that really pulls at heartstrings, and that's breast cancer. And I said, boy, what's the magnitude of heart disease and what's our issue here? And when I presented them this slide, the 1 out of 31 women in the US die of breast cancer, while 1 of every 3 females die of heart disease. And these numbers were just staggering, and we all really, not to minimize breast cancer in any which way, but boy, we've got a lot of heart disease out there that we really need to address. So I kind of compared this to mammography, and the technological advances in the past 20 years for diagnostic breast cancer, right? We used to have full field mammography, and it replaced the analog film that we used in the early 2000s. Then we moved to digital breast, and then it was the new care, giving screening. And then we went from film to 2D to 3D. And while 2D images captured each image, 3D captured 30 times more breast images and could detect 30% more cancer. And then I hit them with the buzzword. Well, it's AI, right? We're going to be using AI. They're using AI in breast cancer. And there was a very interesting, when AI came out for mammography, patients had to actually give consent to say, will you let AI look at this image along with the radiologist? And the people that did, and we did internal look at this, and we were diagnosing many more breast cancers way earlier with AI. So the question came, would you trust mammography that's 20-year-old to technology? And, that's comparing the old X-ray box where we had just plain old films to computer technology. And I said, I wouldn't do this to me, my family, my daughter, and I don't think we should be doing mammography with 20-year-old technology. And then how do we relate this to what we're doing in the nuclear world? So our present state, where was our nuclear camera, right? So we were using the technology that was designed 20 years ago in our new camera, right? And there was a whole lot of new, exciting stuff. There's PET, there's SPECT, and all these offer a lot of advantages. There's less radiation, less risk to patients, attenuation management, more accurate diagnosis. There was CT precision. This was also the gateway to the cath lab, right? With better imaging, we're not calling false positives. We're bringing patients to the cath lab who actually need to go to the cath lab, not a bunch of 30 or 40% normal caths. So this is what I was presenting to them. And so we went to our vendor and said, boy, can you tell us about our present camera? They said, go to the vendor, see where we stand. And we got this letter back that said, your current workstation is what we call end of life or end of service. So they weren't going to be able to support it even anymore. There was no longer warranty service on your post-processing workstation. Therefore, the current momentum of this workstation goes down. We cannot find a solution. No studies will be able to be processed. We will do our best to support it and find parts, and there's a part shortage because we stopped manufacturing this years ago, right? And then the bottom part of that slide was our IT people saw this, right? And IT goes, well, you don't have the latest Windows, and you're vulnerable to security issues. And the IT guys went crazy when they saw this. They said, what? You can't. We got to have high security. There's ransomware everywhere for hospitals now. So we said, all right, well, let's give us the cost of a camera. How much is this going to cost us? So this was the initial thing that we got. It was $600,000 for your basic, nothing fancy, just your basic workhorse. And this was the order that we got. And they looked at it and they kind of went, oh, okay. And then they started adding on stuff, right, that I didn't even think about, right, that the administrators think about every day. There was an inflation factor for salaries. I mean, if you look at most institutions, the salary is the biggest price that we're paying, right? There was operating costs that I didn't think about. There was licensing. There was personnel that we had to relocate and then we had to hire a bunch of people because we needed a new nuclear tech. We needed to staff up our stress people. How we communicate, right? There was malpractice that I didn't think about. So what they wound up, and then there were service contracts, right? There's always things, hidden costs that I didn't even think about. So this service contract was 38,000 per year, and they added an inflation component to this of 4% annual inflation per year as well. So when you look at the total cost of this program over the next couple of years, it was 1.2 million. And this was for your basic scanner, the basic spec scanner. It wasn't anything fancy. It had attenuation correction, and that was about it. And then I got this letter. Oh, hi, Dr. Jerome. I have an update on your quote, and here's some add-on costs. So we didn't think about that you may want to look at. It was software. It was a floating license. It was a reporting software. How do we report the results to our referring physicians? Dynamic flow, syringe pumps, all these things that weren't in that first quote that we got. So the estimated for break even on a new machine. And we had to show them the numbers of studies we did today, each day to break even. So that's what you have to do. You got to say, all right, if we do X number of studies, will we break even or make money? And I think we need to be realistic. I think I say the suits caught onto the game. As docs, we always overestimate. Just like I caught the fish that was 4 feet long and 500 pounds, right? We do 20 studies a day, and I, see 50 patients in the office a day, and I just did 12 caths in the cath lab. We all tend to overestimate. I say you got to be realistic, and you got to tell them the truth. They're going to look at the numbers, the administrators. So the bottom line is you got to show them the numbers of studies per day you're going to actually do and go back on to your historical data. Now, for us, the historical data was back in 2018. COVID, we took a big hit, and I think everybody took a big hit during the COVID era. And so we had to kind of predict what we're going to do. We're moving to a new office. We're going to have more exam rooms. We're going to have more docs. Our volumes will increase. So we had to convince them of that because they were looking at 2020 data going, boy, you never really recovered from COVID. So we had to kind of predict the future, how much CT was going to take out of our volumes. But I had to emphasize the importance of the study. This is a critical study that we do every day. It's been around for a long time. It's well tested. It's got huge amounts of data. Then I argued that we need to maintain the highest quality. And it's just not the We're University program. It's the community. It's your neighbors that you're going to be doing treating. You got to give the highest quality. You really do. So we had to calculate the revenue versus the cost. And we had to show the bean counters that we could actually make a profit. It wasn't going to cost them money doing this. So as a provider, we need to think about the clinical and financial impact. We had to make the talking points brief and to the point. We had to make the elevator talk. We had to make it personal. I had to say, boy, this is similar to breast cancer. 20 years ago, the technology was not so good. It was films that we put up on a view box, right? We're not there anymore. We need to, how do you want your family treated? And then we had to show them the cost analysis and the financial impact of this. And that's my story. And I'm happy to talk to anybody, in the chat or the question and answer to go over this in more detail. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jerome. All right, so we're going to introduce our Catalyst MedTech team, Marty and Tracy, for our next section.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tracy Young, Product Support Specialist for Catalyst MedTech, and also Nuclear Medicine Technologist by trade. I just want to take a few minutes to talk about why everything we just heard really matters. Next slide, please. Today's focus has been on optimizing, and optimizing simply means making smart, intentional adjustments to achieve the best possible outcome for your department. Next slide. So let's just be frank here. I know from an administration standpoint, your goals are always going to be the same. You want to protect your revenue, you want to reduce your expenses, and ideally create some new revenue. Every decision you are going to make will always tie back to one or more of those three outcomes. Okay. Showing here are the typical key points for maximizing both department and administration needs. But instead of reviewing it one by one, I just want to tell you how I was successful in optimizing my department at Dartmouth Health. When I approached my administrators and requested an upgrade for a spec CT, I presented two fact-based perspectives: department needs and administrative needs. For the imaging department standpoint, which were our physicians and our technologist, we needed more accurate, higher integrity results. We needed improved efficiency to decrease that turnaround time, and we needed the ability to offer more image options. I often had referring physicians, outside hospitals calling me, asking me if I could perform amyloid or flurpiridaz or sarcoid, MUGA, maybe even handle their larger patients that their older equipment could not have. Some of those I could do, some of those I could not. You kind of really need to think of if you can support these extra new scans, because that is new patients coming in. And then, yeah, hang up right there for me. Administration needs protect. Your needs are to protect and to grow your revenue, right? So for that, we're going to keep our patients, add maybe some new patients, and improve profitability by adding new scans and be competitive in the market. And you also want to avoid avoidable costs like excess labor, overtime, service and labor calls, extra parts, and then of course downtime. So the department needs and the administrative needs, actually, these goals go hand in hand. They do not compete. Okay, you're good right there. Yeah. If your imaging team tells you all day long, they can tell you what we need, what they want, but if you don't speak the same language, we have a failure to move forward. So we're going to translate it here on this slide right here. When your imaging team asks you for upgrades, it's not because they saw a new flashy ad or they're worried about the future. It is because they already have these issues. They're already having complaints and they're approaching you probably again. Their complaints are going to be image quality degradation, increased downtime, denying the new scan types that are being requested from outside facilities, the HIPAA and IT vulnerabilities that we just heard about. I don't know if you know, but in the spring, there was a very large health system that had a huge hacking break, and all of their HIPAA and IT vulnerabilities were exposed, and they were using USBs to move around patient information because they couldn't send it anymore. So that was a big deal for them. And some of the other concerns they're having are safety concerns. And that could be radiation exposure to your patient, because those older systems are requiring higher doses to get good imaging that your updated imaging can use a lower dose for. If your patients are getting higher doses, then guess what? Your team and your staff are being exposed to higher doses for all of those patients every day. And they could also be looking at faulty equipment. That may be equipment that's constantly breaking down, or it could be like the recent recalls that we've had from a couple manufacturers that not only had faulty equipment, but it was potentially fatal equipment. So you want to take care of those concerns before you are in the list and in the news about that fatal equipment. Next slide, please. When we say that we need new equipment, what you as administrators should be hearing is, this protects my revenue stream. This protects my patient, my technologist, and my physician complaints. This expands my imaging volume and patient reach. So getting those new scans is going to give you more volume and outreach to more patients that need your help. And updating is also going to reduce that downtime. Downtime means lost revenue, and lost revenue makes dissatisfaction for everyone. Your technologist is unsatisfied, your physician, your referring physician, and your patient. Everyone is dissatisfied with downtime. And I say that one more time. Downtime means lost revenue for you. And we can stay on that side right there. I got a little bit ahead. So right now you are dealing with a national tech shortage. Everybody knows that, everybody's dealing with it. Because of that, these techs have options. And I'll be honest, most technologists today will not work on the severely outdated systems. I'm right with them. I mean, after 22 years in the field, there are still several systems I refuse to work on. And that is both due to some imaging quality and also software function. It's just not user-friendly for me. And no matter how much a facility would offer me to work on that system, I'm politely going to say no, thank you, because that's going to be stressful for my day. When I'm having a long day, I really don't want to fight with my equipment. Here's a real world reminder for you, and you may be familiar with this. Did you know that the Cardio MD, which most of you have probably used or have, has been through 4 major manufacturer series, and it has over a dozen different iterations. So even if you find a technologist and they say they have Cardio MD experience, finding a technologist that uses your system may be harder than you think. To put this into a non-technologist perspective, just imagine if you had a new position and you were expected to run a QAD on a system from 2002. Now in 2025, that's really an unrealistic ask. And unfortunately for many of us in imaging, that's our reality. You don't want to run on a 2002 platform. You shouldn't expect your staff to run on a 2002 platform. And you really shouldn't expect your mother to be scanned on a 2002. Next slide, please. As MedAxiom partners, we can all agree that diagnostic accuracy is really non-negotiable. If a camera is failing, if you're having uniformity issues, your software reconstructions are taking too long or they're just poor and your accuracy becomes questionable, you must take action because this is affecting your patients, it's affecting your outcomes, and yes, it's even affecting your revenue. Next slide, please. Thanks. So for my last slide, I really just want to talk about real world. So here's a great example I had last week about how upgrading and not upgrading affects not just your money or your images, but how it will affect your department as a whole. Last week, I trained 10 technologists at a very large university medical center. After working with their training out for 3 days, I found out that 5 of those 10 technologists were actually travelers. And those 5 travelers were earning 2.5 to 3 times more the standard pay than their staff. So that hospital, that's you guys, are essentially paying the equivalent of 25 technologists for a 10 technologist department. And that is money they did not need to be spending. So at the end of the week, I asked, why are your staff leaving? I mean, this seems like a great place. I mean, you've got plenty of cameras. What's going on? And they said exactly the same thing that Dr. Jerome and I are just talking about. Antiquated equipment, outdated software, their pictures just look bad. They're slow, inefficient workflows. They're behind every single day because they're having to rescan or reprocess for the physicians. And an interesting thing that I didn't plan on is they said they had some decrease in their physician confidence. And so I asked, is this because of the imaging? And they said, well, not always. We have so many travelers and they're only getting trained maybe for a day or maybe just on one patient. Or sometimes they're just coming in and just starting to scan. So the physician confidence on these technologists they didn't know was really low. And I'll tell you why. I'm not sure if you know this, but as a technologist, you can give me any scan you have, and I can reprocess that scan, and I can give it a defect, and I can also remove a defect. I can do that by masking, I can do that by smoothing, I can cut edges too low, and I can give that patient any kind of defect I want. I can even adjust the EF. So if you have a traveler that you don't know them and you are not confident, you cannot be confident in these images. So you need good images and you need good technologists. All of these issues, I explain to them, are completely fixable. And when we can fix these, when we fix the technology, let me get this right, you will fix your workflow and often the staffing will fix right along with that. So the moral to my story is this: when your department is going to run at its best, everybody wins. Your technologists, your patients, your physicians, and your administrators. Now, on that note, I'd like to introduce Marty Shirley. He's going to help you see what's possible so everyone can win. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Our focus as a company is about patient healthcare. Next slide, please. Our purpose, our stated purpose, create access to quality diagnostic imaging so patients receive the care, treatment they need. Our core values are transparency, collaboration, and ownership. We honor that internally and externally. In a moment, you'll understand why I'm saying these things. Next slide. The way we live our purpose is to think about the full scope. And in this case, in this setting, it's cardiology imaging. We are the only vendor you can work with that has every possible solution for cardiac imaging, particularly when it comes to nuclear and MICT, molecular imaging and CT. Next slide. So let's talk about what that really means. Part of the business that I run is a traditional equipment business. We sell newly manufactured nuclear SPECT cameras for cardiology. We sell refurbished SPECT cardiology cameras, radiology-driven cameras. We sell brand new PET CT devices. We sell refurbished PET CT devices. We sell workstation upgrades for all the things I just said. Anything and everything, including CT angiography. We can work with you with a brand new Araneta Duo or Duo Spotlight for CT angiography. The other half of the business, we actually do clinical imaging. We're the single largest provider in terms of test sites and nuclear medicine technologist of outsourced cardiac imaging solutions in the United States. We have just under 200 nuclear medicine technologists employed by our company. We own 88 cardiac SPECT imaging systems. We also have some other type of imaging devices. So why am I talking about that? Think about everything that Dr. Jerome and Tracy have said. In my executive role over an imaging business, I heard all these same things from reading physicians, referring physicians, from our technologists, from our different business leaders. So half the time you may think that I don't understand what you live through. And I'll tell you, you're wrong. We do 250,000 patients a year. And we have since October of 2000. I know exactly what you guys live through. But I also happen to know a company that can upgrade every one of those systems, that can help, that can change, that can help optimize what we do clinically for patients. Because at the end of this, there's a patient in their heart, and most of us only get one of those. Next slide. Over the last 22 months, we've invested $3.85 million in upgrading the cameras that we own that do clinical imaging in over 1,000 imaging sites every day. 3.85 million in the last 2 years. Here's what I've seen when we look at our KPIs. Labor hours per day decreased. Nuclear medicine technologist confidence and job satisfaction increased. Reading physicians' feedback. Noticeable image quality improvement. Higher clinical confidence in making decisions. Much more clarity in interpretations. Our nuclear medicine technologist turnover is cut in half. Cut in half. Every time you lose the nuclear tech, you lose studies. Every time you lose a nuclear tech, you have recruiting costs, you have training costs, and on and on and on and on. We actually have done what we're talking to you folks about considering doing. We took a hard look at our business, our inventory, our equipment, and what we would do with it. And we did the right thing. And that's why we're very comfortable and confident having this discussion with you folks. It does change the business. The other thing that happened in this that I think is very relevant, even though those of you who are only listening and thinking about the dollars and cents, today's technology optimized. And when I say that, I don't mean you have to buy brand new. We have several brand new systems you can buy. We have an entire lineup of cardiac cameras, including a core cam, which used to be called a CardioMD. If you want a new CardioMD, you give us a call. We sell those. If you want a new Digirad, of course, we sell those. We manufacture those. They all come with iterative reconstruction. That doesn't mean anything to anybody on this call, maybe to Tracy and Jamie and Dr. Jerome, but I'll tell you what it means for everybody else. half-time, half-dose imaging. A lot of times people say, okay, great, we'll just scan faster. We already have the fastest scanner on the planet in our company. So what we decided was to reduce the doses. Tracy mentioned it. It's better, it's lower radiation for our workers, it's lower radiation for the patients. But guess what? The single most expensive thing, the single increased cost that commercial radiopharmacies have is the cost of the radioactive materials. It's not the powder, it's the radioactive part. So we went to our vendor and we said, we will reduce our standard doses if you'll reduce our cost of doses. And they did it. They're now more profitable selling it to us at a lower number. And everybody's better. It's the lowest radiation possible for the patients, for our employees, for our customers, and we save money on those costs. Don't look at how much it might cost you. Look at what it's costing you already that you're just simply not paying attention to. Next slide. I'm not going to read all of these to you. I kind of want them to be evergreen and we'll let them sit here for a minute. But if you own a SPECT camera, PET-CT camera, we can repair and maintain it for you. Probably save you money. You own a SPECT camera, PET-CT camera, we can upgrade it. Add new capabilities, studies, and revenue. Amyloidosis, sarcoidosis, those things may not mean anything to you as administrators. Those are things that kill people, so they matter. There are probably studies you can't perform today in your nuclear lab because the systems that you have maybe cannot do those protocols. They might be able to be upgraded to do that. If they can't, you can consider new or even newer than what you own now. We truly refurbish. We don't just paint them. We actually, by golly, ISO refurbish them, or you can buy brand new. And you can do all these different tests that you can now do. If you could do one new type of scan every single day, you just grew your revenue. You just improved your utilization of your nuclear techs. Yet the first thing you think is, hey, it's paid for. It's hard to beat paid for. No, it's not that hard when you stop and really look at it. Don't have capital? It's okay. Want to rent it? We could rent it. How about you let us do your repair and maintenance? Maybe we upgrade your system for you in exchange for a long-term relationship on repair and maintenance. You see, we think different. We are different. We're not a build a box, sell a box. Thank you very much. Get out of the way. Oh, by the way, let's pile on extra software. I'm sorry that happened to you, Dr. Jerome. It's not how our company does business. If you want to upgrade, if you want to optimize, you have a conversation with us and we'll help you find a way. You can't get lower cost on your doses? Why don't you buy them from me? $14 million a year is what we spend on isotopes. We have some leverage. We're happy to share that leverage. And maybe that's how you help get your upgrade. We'll find a way together. And lastly, I'll tell you that we are this industry's secret resource. Lots of companies call us to schedule our professionals like Tracy and her associates to help train techs when there's turnover. Sometimes we rent out our nuclear techs when we have open capacity, but I don't want to mislead you. We don't have a lot of open capacity, right? There's a shortage. By the way, we've started a nuclear medicine technologist program with a college in Pennsylvania to help address that for the industry. We're just a little bit different. What I would invite you to do is let us help you figure out what you have and what you could have. That's why we talk about, let's see what's possible. I promise you, we will spend as little of your money as we possibly can to help you optimize your nuclear cardiology experience. And with that, I say thank you for listening, and I sure hope we can spend the next 15 minutes asking questions and talking.
Thanks, Marty, Tracy, Dr. Jerome, for that presentation. And Jamie, thank you for that introduction. I don't know, Jamie, if you have any concluding words you'd like to throw in before we get to the question and answer section.
I will just say, as a past administrator over a cardiovascular imaging department, it's always nice to know that you have options, and it's great to be able to work with a vendor that is more of a partnership than a one and done. So one of the things I do applaud Catalyst with is being able to really think about that at the forefront.
The one thing I'm going to say is it's interesting, you know, I was in a little bubble dealing with my own new office and my own issues. And then hearing other people across the country, this is a universal problem. Everybody's got the same problems as me. I was like, oh, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deal with that? And then you talk to everybody's got the same issues. It's nationwide.
Right. So we do have a couple questions that have come in already, but for all of those in attendance today, if you have any questions, again, a reminder, we have the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen where you can submit any of those questions, and we'll certainly make our best effort to get your questions asked and answered with our group. We have a couple of them that have come in so far, and I'll throw this first one out to the group in general. So if anyone wants to field this, please go right ahead. But how are programs, I guess, from what you're seeing, balancing the rise of CTA with the need to maintain a high quality SPECT or PET program, especially when those modalities are competing for resources, attention, things like that?
All right, I'll take that. So I'm a multimodality imager. I read CT, I read echo, and I do nuke. And what I found was that it's picking the right patient for the right test. And we've always had this, right? So maybe my younger patient, woman, lower risk patient, may go to cardiac CT. My patient who's already got disease, has a stent, they're staying with nuke. The previous bypass patient is going to nuke. Now, what happened in the past was there was a lot of stress echo happening. And the stress echo volume seemed to have dropped off. The stress echo patient was that younger, usually female patient in a lower risk category. So it's almost like the stress echo volume is dropping, but the cardiac CT is increasing. They're just shifting. It's the same parallel. So the nuclear indicated patient is still there. So it really, it's impeding on the low risk patient. Probably shouldn't have got a nuclear stress test 20 years ago, because that's all we had.
The thing I would add would be that, the industry's talked a lot about right patient, right test, right time. I love to add right reason, so to me, an idealized department would have all of these modalities, all of these tools. So the physician could choose the best tool for the patient and that patient's need. Therefore, I would suggest understanding what your capabilities are, what they could be, and investing appropriately. I don't think SPECT ever goes away. We sell a lot of PET CT systems, and people go, "Oh, I'm never going to do SPECT again." That's not accurate. That's just not right. Of course you are, right? There's a role and there's reason to pick patients for all of these different things. And frankly, it's not financial, right? If we focus on doing the right thing for the patient, everything else is going to work out fine. So it's investing the right amount based on your individual practice. That's why there's not a one size fits all solution, just like physicians don't have one answer for every patient. It has to be customized.
Yeah, and Marty, kind of on the note you just finished on, we did have a question come in, and Dr. Jerome, I'd like to maybe pose this to you specifically, and then hear a little more, Marty, along what you just said around, the question is PET CT replacing SPECT imaging, and that they're hearing more clinics mentioning PET, and what are your thoughts around that?
Marty, you want to go first, or you want me to go?
No, I'll defer to you, sir.
So again, I think there's the right patient for the right study. I think SPECT technology has improved significantly. Well, it doesn't necessarily match the same indications as the PET, but so a PET patient might be a very heavy patient, might not be ideal for SPECT. So I think they're very different indications. So a lot of people are trying to move to PET, but I still see a large indication for SPECT. in this category.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's not about the ability to get paid. I'll be brash enough to say that, right? I don't think a clinical indication is whether or not you can get approval by the payer. I think it's what does this patient need and what's the benefit to the patient. The chemistry of the isotopes between PET and SPECT are different. That's one of the reasons why you might do PET for one patient and SPECT is fine for another. As far as the evolution of SPECT cameras, Dr. Jerome's correct. If you think about, oh, it's called a cardio MD, so it's the same camera. No, there were 4 different hardware iterations, and then there's software and recon software, and on and on and on and on. There were probably 16 variations. In Digirad's world, the innovator and solid state detectors, we're now on generation 6. So if you tried a Digirat in 2000, guess what? It is radically completely different in 2025 than it was in 2000. We also now offer the Exact Plus, which has a CT-based technology to do attenuation correction. Attenuation correction increases sensitivity, specificity, accuracy of SPECT. Does it match one-to-one to PET? No, it doesn't. But man, is it darn close, and it's much better than SPECT without. But again, does it make sense in your practice? I don't know until we talk about your practice, your patients, and what your goals are.
Thank you. Another question we've got here is, it sounds like someone's considering moving some equipment that's a little bit older, maybe 15 or 20 years old, into a new space. And curious if you know of any maybe factors that administrators and other individuals might underestimate or may not consider in terms of risks in that move.
Yeah, boy, do I. We don't have enough time, Max. I'll try to give the short answer. I think it just becomes a matter of making the decision based on what you absolutely have. Is it worth investing money in? Because you're going to spend, could be $15,000 or more to relocate a cardiac SPECT camera from one office, 2 miles down the road to a new office. It's 20 years old. You're halfway to an upgrade just to move the darn thing. There are just some things in life. Why would you do that? Now, I would say it's also a great time to consider an upgrade or maybe a trade up where a company like ours can come in, deinstall it. And if you can't afford a new one, fine. But at least get a newer version. There were 4 different series of cardio MDs. If you have a series 1, now's a great time to think about taking that 15,000, putting it into a deposit of, if you do a refurbished series 3 or series 4 with a brand new Win 11 operating system and brand new Cedar software that can now do all these new tests we just talked about, that's a pretty good decision. I think that's a better decision than moving a 20-year-old camera and just wasting $15,000 to move it from point A to point B. So again, it's individualized, Max. It really depends. And when we think about sales folks, and again, I hate to pick on the circumstance that Dr. Jerome went through, but if you work with a company that has the mentality that we do, we're going to go help you figure it out. And then we're going to give you choices. We're going to say, listen, it's 15 grand to move from here to there. God bless America. We're happy to do that for you, and we'll do a great job. Okay. Or you could do this, or you could do this. This is what this will do for you. This is what this will do for you. It's up to you. It's your money. We're here to help you figure it out. I hate when people talk about, sales consultancy, right? Because it's so overused, nobody believes it. But the reality is we are so connected as a purpose to patient care. We're going to help you see it and say, look, here's your choices. Invest how you think it's best for your practice. And I got a little long-winded, Max, but that's my honest answer.
No, thank you. That's good perspective for sure.
I'm just going to tag on what we were talking when we were talking about moving our old camera to this new office space. They said, boy, things break in the move. We're not covering it. If it breaks and your camera's dead, and you've just lost all of this. And something, so you won't cover the movie. They said, nope, it's an old camera, we're not covering it.
Yeah, particularly if it's one where I think I was listening well enough to know the vintage and parts were not available. I mean, there's lots of reasons, right? That's why it depends on which make and model and vintage. And here's the thing. Oh, well, swap that board out. There's 17 versions of that board. Which one is it? Right? I mean, it is way more complicated than business executives want to think it is. I happen to be schizophrenic, not mentally, but professionally. I'm a nuclear tech by trade. I've done sales, been executive running imaging centers, and now I'm fortunate enough to get to do what I'm doing here. So I understand this thing really well. Many things I don't understand, but by golly, in this lane, I'm really confident about trying to help people. So yeah, I think that's an important part of the whole equation.
Dr. Jerome, just a quick follow-up on that. I'm curious. Marty mentioned a couple of maybe different options and strategies outside of you either move the old equipment or you have to go buy something brand new. In your experience, when you went through this, did you go into it thinking it was kind of either or, and then you were maybe surprised that, oh, there are some other options here? And I'm glad we did have this conversation with somebody who might be able to help guide us through them.
Right. Well, I think the thing that we ran into, I went to different vendors that I knew, right, to different companies, and I said, what do you have to offer? And they really only had one solution, right? So I didn't have the whole menu of options at the time. So knowing that there are more options, and as we did more exploration, we found more and more and more options. So it's nice to be able to go to, I don't know whether I want to say the diner, where the menu's 20 pages long, but it's kind of helpful to have that big menu of options to do. Do we do PET? Can we do sarcoid imaging? Can we do infection imaging? We're doing PYP. It just opened up a new window for us.
Yeah, and what I would add to that is, when we looked at how we became Catalyst MedTech, 14 companies came together. We rebranded only in January. And, if you think about a strategy of a business, the approach that Dr. Jerome's talking about is a very classic manufacturer and repair and maintenance approach, which we are in about a third of our business. And then we do all these other things in a third. We'd be considered an independent service organization or refurbishment business. And then we have the actual clinical solutions business. By bringing all of that together, we create our own unicorn, because strategically, why would I go bang my head against the wall to fight GE and Siemens, two of the largest employers and powerful companies in the world? And we're just little old Catalyst MedTech. We have to be different. We're different on purpose. And so the better we are at telling our story and having market exposure, then the Dr. Jeromes of the world would at least know that, hey, here's a company to call. It's our fault he didn't know to talk to us, not his, right? So that's our job, is to get our message out there. And in part, that's why we enjoy working with MedAxiom. And heck, we went to Dr. Jerome's presentation at ASNEC and loved it so much. We didn't know him, right? We just thought it was a great presentation, and that people needed to hear it.
One more question. We're just about out of time. Marty, this is a little bit more of a specific one, but maybe along the lines of options that folks hadn't considered at first. Do you offer any kind of small footprint solutions around SPECT and CT?
So for SPECT, all of our SPECT cameras are small footprint. The system that has attenuation correction, it is a CT technique to do the attenuation correction. It itself is not a diagnostic CT device, right? Now, if the question was really framed from cardiac CT, like CT angiography, yes, we offer the Araneta Spotlight Duo. They are much smaller footprint than the systems manufactured by others. They also are much lower power consumption, and they're lighter weight. They are the folks who kind of originated the concept of a single heartbeat CT cardiac study. It's actually fascinating, world-class technology. Would love to chat offline with whoever would like to.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are out of time for questions. We will be sending a follow-up email to all of our attendees. So if you did have any questions that we didn't have a chance to get to today, we'll have contact information in there for you to reach out to. Before we conclude, I do want to thank Marty, Tracy, Dr. Jerome very much for your time today. And Jamie, of course, thank you. And I don't know if you had any closing remarks yourself, Jamie.
No, I just again wanted to extend the thank you. This was a great webinar with a lot of information. This will be available for replay. I do recommend that when you are looking to, or even thinking about looking at replacing your SPECT equipment, this may be a great resource to start with.
It might also, if you think about Max's homework of figuring out what you own, I know somebody that'll help. We'll audit it for you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.